love it. You are live. Right, here we are, Rebels and Rule Breakers, with the gorgeous, super energetic force of life that is Kay Irvine. And I have been building this up for a reason, because this is going to be so good. I'm really excited. So we've had a nice little chat before we've come live, and we're just going to see where the conversation takes us, aren't we? Because I reckon we're both going to be pretty good at that. So let me do you a little intro, guys, on who Kay is. So let me find my little notes bit. So Kay is a 49-year-old. Doesn't look anything like that, by the way. 56. Oh, you've given me the wrong information there.
No, 49 was when the prediction happened.
Oh, okay, right. I see. Yeah, so I read it wrong. So 49-year-old veterinary business coach predicted her own death and then saw terminal cancer as a gift from the universe. Wowzers. So you've got a website, haven't you, that actually talks a lot more about that. So tell us what the website address is, and we'll drop it into the comments as well for people.
It's called, which I regret having such a long name sometimes when I'm having to type it out, is conversationswithcancer.co.uk.
That's not too long. It makes sense. It's not obscure. It's all good. And on that website, I'm just going to read the section actually, and then you can tell us more. So you have put on there, if God had told me in 2015 I'm going to trigger cancer in your body, in January 2016 you will nearly die, but you won't. Your life will appear to fall apart, but it isn't. You'll be learning important lessons. The government will step in and take away most of the pressures. Your anxiety will go away. You will have the best medical specialists nearby. You will learn about nutrition. You will have support from family, friends, and work colleagues. Your relationships will improve. The cancer is only temporary and you will beat it. But remember, this is not a battle. Your mind, body, and spirit are simply being aligned. You will write your book. You will inspire people. You will live a long, healthy, and happy life. Do you want this deal? I would have said, hell yeah, bring it on. That's amazing. I love it. I love it so much. It's just so the energy that I've got from you every time we've spoken up to this point. So tell us more about who Kay is.
Well, that's the thing. That's like the hardest question in the world.
Isn't it?
Kay could be anything you want. And that's the journey, is that Kay is capable of being anything you want. But knowing who I am has always been a struggle, because I've always trying to be, I've always been a bit of a shape-shifting, sort of get bored easily. If the energy's stagnant, I have to move it forward. I have to move. I can't stay in one place doing the same old thing day in, day out for any length of time. And if you look back at the last 30, 35 years, it looks like I meant to do what I did, because there's a sort of like a natural, start off as a military driving instructor at the age of 19 in West Germany, married to a soldier, had a baby at 18. I was the child that at school they were sort of saying could do better but doesn't pay attention, too busy talking,
distracted.
So I would follow my nose and just go with whatever happened. I didn't really have a plan. I didn't really know what I was going to do with my life, but what I was really interested in was art, writing, and horses. That's the only three things. And my daddy said to me, you're going to fall in love with a lovely man who'll look after you and live happily ever after. It's very Disney. Trouble is, that sort of optimism didn't really get me very far. And I had this sort of like childlike optimism about things that was really naive. So I just used to go, oh yeah, I'll do that. Oh, that's, anyway. So I sort of did the baby and marriage thing early on, became a military driving instructor, which was really cool, and learned a lot about communication. I mean, that was a long time ago. That was 1987.
Wow.
You know, so yeah, but because I'd had quite a dramatic childhood, let's put it that way, a chaotic and dramatic childhood, that sort of thing was normal for me. So, you know, dodging the IRA and things like that was like, you know, I learned to live on adrenaline.
Right.
So there's a point to that will come around later. So then I got divorced, married another guy who was a businessman, got into business, became a PR girl, you know, did all that for a lot of consultancy for 25 years. I'm pretty unemployable, to be honest. Can't do that. I can't be managed by people very easily. Yeah.
I tried for many years.
yeah. So what I like to do is I like to go in, do my magic and leave.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to be in the same office as people every day and get on with them. It's just beyond me. So got into business, but what I did was I applied military strategies to the business world and did a lot of training on guerrilla marketing, PR, and I taught people how to think differently to what they were taught at university or what the other consultants were telling them. So I was always a little bit off the wall. And then I decided to specialise in veterinary. My way of learning about the veterinary industry was to get a job as a receptionist in a vet's and do consultancy outside of that. Thoroughly enjoyed it, stayed for a few years. But once I got a job as a veterinary business consultant, I was under so much pressure because I couldn't say no. So I was getting loaded with more work, couldn't say no. And within 3 months of moving to Swindon, the cancer triggered.
Right.
And having that job because I was over pressured, if you like. And I didn't know how to deal with stress. So that is really the sort of the career timeline. But I was born knowing that I was more than this body, this human being.
Yeah.
And so I sort of always had an ability to step out and look at the broader view and then step back in. But yeah, the reason that I got ill in the first place was a buildup of long-term stress.
That mind-body connection is phenomenal, isn't it? We're only just starting to really let that into, you know, science, modern science, aren't we, really, in modern conversation? There's a non-woo-woo thing.
Yeah, and what you might have noticed is that as soon as you said to me, "Who are you?" I started talking about work.
Yeah.
So it's a natural thing, isn't it, with a lot of people that we get our identity through work.
Yes.
And it's easy in relationships and jobs and all sorts of things to sort of lose who we are because if we've never been on our own for long enough to know who we are, we don't really know, do we? So, and some people are really strong about who they are. And some people are very sort of butterfly. My sister was always very sure of who she was, but I was never like that. So I was always reinventing myself and thinking, oh, who shall I be today? You know, and dyeing my hair and dressing in different things. And that creativity in me came out in reinventing myself.
Yeah.
So when the cancer came along, piece of cake.
Wow.
You know?
You know, it's interesting what you say about that. If you can hear that noise, by the way, it's my dog digging the carpet in the background because he's an idiot. What you say about people and their identity being with work, you know, about what they do for a living. I was banging on about this all of last year when people were in furlough, and the fact that there were so many people thrown into that silence and that stillness, and suddenly their job was taken away from them in some form or other, and they had to sit there with themselves. And that is deafening for some people. Very difficult.
Absolutely. And I tell you what, is when you, I even worked through the first year of treatment full time, and I was on steroids as well. And I'm pretty hyper without steroids. So me on like 20 steroids a day, I was off the chart. You know, I thought I was meditating half the time, but I would literally go, you know, and it got to the point where they couldn't control me at all.
Right.
And my honesty had, well, the filter isn't really there to begin with, but there was no filter. And it got to the point where I was collapsing all the time. And I was getting dragged off into hospital and coming straight back to work in my work clothes because I'd been there overnight, just hadn't even been home. I'd just come straight back to work. So I was obsessed and I was a complete workaholic. And then all of a sudden, further down the line, the company decides that I cannot carry on working, which was, I thought I was great. I thought I was fine. And they were like, goodbye.
You're a risk.
You're an absolute loose cannon. But you know what? That hit me the hardest of anything.
Right.
I was literally, for 2 years, I couldn't do it. I was sat around thinking, what do I do? I burst into tears. I was like, well, if I don't go to work,
who am I?
What do I do? Who am I?
Yeah.
I haven't got a close family. I haven't got, I'm so busy working. I know people, but I'm not going to pop around someone's house. And it really floored me for a couple of years. And I really struggled with that from a stress point of view.
Yeah.
It's not. And also when I wrote that passage that you read out about if God said blah, blah, I expected it to be a year, maybe a couple of years, 6 years later. And I'm like, yeah, I've been rebooted and upgraded 4 times now. And I'm like, I get stronger every time, but I don't want to have to keep going there.
Upgraded 4 times. I need to come back to that. I'm just going to say, guys, if you are watching this right now, I've just seen Facebook users come in and said, hello, just got back in time. We can't see who you are unless you give either say in every comment who you are or you give StreamYard permission to show your face and name. But hello to those of you who are with us. Comment, ask questions, please interact with us while we're here. So rebooted and upgraded 4 times. Wow. What does that mean in normal language?
Okay, normal language, I nearly died a few times.
Wow.
But I'm really good at not dying. It's like a sport, if you like. I just go in there, I slide in, I've pushed the boundaries, I haven't taken the medication properly, I've got stressed, the cancer's gone up, and I just appear at the hospital and go, come on guys, it's time for another reboot and upgrade, and thoroughly enjoy myself. And
this is just so refreshing to this is one of the many reasons I wanted to talk to you. Percy, will you stop digging the carpet? Sorry. This attitude you have of, right, let's have some fun with this shit. When did that first happen? How did it take you? Did you have to go through a process to get to that, or was it just an instant decision of, right, this is happening, let's see what we can do with it?
Well, for somebody who gets bored easily and quite likes a bit of drama, you can't get better than terminal cancer, can you? But when I was diagnosed, I was on my own, and I was just like, I got about 5 minutes of going, no, it wasn't even 5 minutes. I mean, the doctor said you've got cancer. I was like, what? And I said, no, it can't be right.
It wasn't in the plan.
Because I'd nearly died of sepsis. I'd been in hospital for 6 weeks with sepsis. And they said, look, this girl eats quite well. She's healthy. She's a size 10. She doesn't smoke. She doesn't drink. Why is she so ill all the time? Because all my life, I've been in and out of hospital with a low immune system, which is called neutropenia, which they discovered in about 2009, I think, 2010. And it's like the precursor to the blood cancer, where it knocks out your immune system and you just catch everything that's going. Literally, the second that September, October happened, I spent most of the winter in hospital, with chest infections, pneumonia, everything. But I'd been ill for most of my life through stress-related, well, I don't know what it was, but I think stress has got a lot to do with it. But I'd always had infections and stuff, so I might have had that for all my life, I don't know. But to me, being in hospital wasn't that unusual, and I quite like being waited on, to be honest. So I take the pain and the torture and I just go, yeah, but I have to sit on my ass and do nothing and get waited on. It's not that bad, so but when I was diagnosed, I just strolled in, thinking it'd be nothing, and I said, well, that can't be right, because I've got heart attacks and Alzheimer's in my family. Nobody's got cancer. That can't, but literally, I just took a beat and I went, this is a gift. And she just looked at me and went, what? Because they always have the Macmillan nurses there just in case you want a good cry, which I've never done. And I said, no, it's a gift. And she went, why? How can you say that? And I said, because this is going to be the big thing that happens to me that I can then help other people. I said, I'm going to get through it. I have no doubt that this is temporary. I said, this is not going to kill me. I said, and yeah, it's fine. Let's do it. But then she said to me, okay, any questions? I was like, nope, be fine. But then at that point, I decided I was going to cure it myself by natural means. Because I quite like a heroic sort of tragedy, you know, where it all comes good in the end. You know, I'm quite into that sort of
Disney thinking again. Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I'll be a hero, and then I'll help people, and I'll be terribly, you know, altruistic, and it'll be amazing. It's ego talking. And they thought I was a little bit nuts. And she said, can you go off for a blood test, please? So I said, yeah, fine. So off I went to the blood unit, the what are they called? The phlebotomists. And I sat in that waiting room, and I was like, I had to wait half an hour for a blood test, and I didn't know what to do, because I was like, I've just been diagnosed with cancer. But I'm sitting here doing nothing. I don't know anybody. It was very surreal. I was sort of in my own little bubble. And I thought, well, what am I going to do for them, like, while I'm waiting? So I texted everybody I knew. You never guess what? I've only got cancer. Like I'd said, oh, you never guess what? I've got a boil on my arse.
Oh,
it was so casual. And
wow.
The only person that I didn't text was my son, because I just thought that wouldn't be very appropriate.
Probably need to do that one face to face. Yeah.
Yeah. But I did it in the end.
The phone must have gone off then, like while you were sat there waiting. It must have blown up.
That's the problem. I didn't anticipate that people would reply. To me, it was just a broadcast, because Kay was born to broadcast.
Right.
Kay wasn't born to deal with all the stuff that comes back. Mm-hmm. I didn't think I was a two-way communicator. I'm like a broadcaster.
You're a beacon.
I go, here's the bulletin, here's the announcement. Oh my God, can everybody please leave me alone?
Often deal with that without me, please.
Yeah. So I am like a newspaper that just goes, right, I'm broadcasting. I don't want anyone to reply. I just want you all to, you know, just getting out there. And the phone went crazy. And I was just like, oh my God. I was like, I didn't anticipate that would happen. And it was actually quite funny looking back, because I texted loads of people. I was so bored, you know, and I was just like, I couldn't cope with the response. And I was like, because everybody was really worried. And I was like, oh, I wasn't worried. Why is everybody worried?
Don't worry about these things, you know.
Yeah, I didn't anticipate that either. So it's quite funny.
Oh, you are funny. So,
yeah, but I got no idea of, or I haven't had, I didn't seem to have much idea of other people being worried, because I wasn't, you know.
Yeah. So, you know, you talk about that almost that instant decision of it's a gift. What is it you think has contributed to you being able to see it that way in your life? How have you got that level of, what's even the word, you know, resilience doesn't cover it. Positive mental attitude doesn't cover it. Self-mastery, you know, probably does go in there somewhere, doesn't it? Where's that come from?
I've always been around personal development. My second husband was a personal development coach and a marketing guy. I've always been drawn to personal development, and I've always fought against it in a lot of ways, because I don't like being told what to do. So I've sort of had a bit of the thing is, if I sort my thoughts out, if we all personally develop to the point where we're enlightened, I can't see that life's going to be very exciting. You know what I mean?
We'd all transcend into the light beings we came
Yeah.
from.
I quite like the drama. I like the roller coaster that is life's ups and downs.
Yeah.
So even though I never really managed to, I didn't know how to manage stress that well, because of the way I grew up, really, I thought ups and downs were perfectly normal. It's like the soap opera type of stuff was perfectly normal. I didn't expect, and if it got quiet, I got a bit twitchy because I was used to a certain level of stress, and I didn't realize that actually I was addicted. I was addicted to stress. So if there wasn't any stress coming in from outside, I'd probably create some disruption myself. And a lot of it was immaturity, but I was actually, like, when I was at school, I used to get thrown out of assembly a lot because even when I was little, I'd stand there like this with my arms folded. I'd be like, I'm not singing hymns. And they go, what? And I'd be like, no, I'm not singing hymns. You haven't convinced me God exists yet.
Show me a business case.
And why are we only doing this in the class? You know, I'm not getting a broad view of things here. So I always sort of knew. I always had a bit of a global view. That I was more than this body, this person. This is Kay. I am using Kay as a vehicle in this movement. So, and there's a lot of people saying that sort of stuff now, but I sort of knew that before, which meant that I never really took anything that seriously.
Right. I definitely had, when I was younger, an almost Truman Show feeling.
Yes.
And, you know, this concept of, you talk about, you know, you enjoy the drama and the ups and downs, that very much keys into that whole, you know, we're playing the human game thing for me. That where, you know, it's that analogy of you watch a movie to get the thrill of it. You don't watch a movie because where everybody's happy and nothing happens and everyone's okay and peaceful. You watch it because you want to go through that drama and that emotion.
Exactly.
And if this reality is something different than maybe we think it is, then maybe that's what that's about.
Yeah, I think so. And I think a lot of people live lives of quiet desperation because they don't embrace that.
Yeah.
But I've had an awful lot of people along the way, a lot of friends that I've met in the hospital. That meeting friends in hospitals and hospices, it's not the greatest because you lose a lot of them, you know. But for instance, I'll give you a little example of how I dealt with the hospice. I mean, because I didn't think I needed support. I don't like being fussed over because I don't like people's emotions and worries to infect me. You know, I don't see it as, I sound ungrateful, don't I? But I don't, I see it interference of my frequency.
Yeah.
Rather than helpful.
Yeah.
You know, I'm on a journey. I'm really focused. I know what I'm doing. And if people come and try and fuss, I find it distracting. So I was always having like, no visitors, please, on my hospital door, because you're always on your own when you've got a low immune system, which is great because I've got a room, I've got a telly, I've got an ensuite, I've got people bringing me food. Yeah. Shouldn't enjoy hospital quite that much. But when I went to the hospice, eventually, it was because I had a friend who needed the hospice, and I took her. And I was actually going through I had a stem cell transplant in 2017, which was horrific, I have to say. But the treatment sucked, but the experience was transformational. It was like being a caterpillar, becoming a butterfly. It was like, because you die and you get reborn, you know. But I was looking after my friend, Glenda, bless her heart, who had lung cancer, and she was wasting away, and I was trying to look after her at the same time. And I took her we went to the hospice, but I started going to the hospice reluctantly, pretending to be a volunteer, because I will absolutely not be a patient and not do what everybody else is doing, which is sitting around with everybody going, oh, there, would you like a hand massage? No, I'd like some loud music, actually. I'm not, just because I've got cancer, just because I've got cancer doesn't mean that everything has to be really neutral and quiet and lovely. I went, does nobody have any fun around here? So I used to rock up with my pink Mohican, dressed like a teenage boy.
We need to see a photo of that, Kay.
But I'd turn up with raspberries and strawberries because they used to give us the most boring food. And it was like vanilla ice cream with nothing. Well, sorry. Just because I have cancer doesn't mean I'm not going to have fun. That's it. So I used to try and corrupt everybody as much as possible, and just bring a bit of life to the place. And they did enjoy it. They did let me go a lot longer than I should have done. But on Halloween a couple of years ago, they all sort of said, oh, it's Halloween next time we meet up. Are we having a party? And they were like, no, we don't have parties. We don't have music. We don't dress up.
We don't do that here.
So I rocked up with platform boots, with lightning going up the sides, a big witch's hat with 15 wigs and face paints. And I just literally rocked up, walked in and went, right, it's Halloween. Come on, you people. Just because you're dying doesn't mean you can't have fun.
Oh God, I bet that was brilliant. And I bet there was some interesting reactions there, wasn't there?
So funny. We had a blast, an absolute blast. And people forget they're ill when they're laughing. You know?
Yeah. And you know, like, if you think you may have a limited amount of time left, like, why would you not use it having a laugh and having fun? If you can manage to do that, you know, why would you not?
But the thing is that don't forget, when a doctor makes a prognosis, it's like auto-suggestion.
Of course it is.
And that's how voodoo works. Voodoo works by telling you you're going to die. And I'm having none of that. So my doctor's given me 24 hours a couple of years ago, and I was like, la, didn't hear you. You can go out of my room. Goodbye.
Oh my God.
I don't accept anything he says unless it makes sense to me.
Yeah.
So, but the trouble is, I think, because he is the sort of person who he's very definite about what's going to happen. So when I got diagnosed, I said, I'll do it on my own. You know, I'm going to do the natural thing. I'm going to give up all these things and it's going to be great and blah, blah, blah. The trouble is the cancer was at 40% when it was diagnosed in February 2016. I had 4 months off work where I was giving up everything, caffeine, sugar. I did everything the way that I had researched on the internet. And it stayed the same. But I was so weak. So I wasn't eating much. And the sepsis had knocked it out of me a bit. And after a little while, I had to go back to work because I was running out of money. And you know what? Within a month, it over doubled to 85%. And because it's blood cancer, for anybody that's watching that doesn't know what sort of cancer it is, it's multiple myeloma, which is where the bone marrow produces cancer instead of blood.
Oh,
so
bloody hell. I didn't know that.
So constantly bringing it down with the drugs means that as soon as we stop, it keeps generating more.
Yeah.
However, if I'm stressed and I don't get enough sunshine, because a lot of it's vitamin D related as well, it can try and take me out, which it's done a few times. But I just don't accept being treated like a patient. And every time he says to me, I had 24 hours, I had over 90% cancer, New Year's Eve 2018, and I had to have 2 lots of 6 days on chemo. And my doctor came in and my consultant, he looked at me and he went, I think I'll have to get the palliative doctor in to see you. I think it's that time. He says, I don't think you're going to get through to tomorrow. And I was just like, New Year's Eve? You haven't even started the treatment yet. Are you serious?
You're taking the piss.
Taking the piss. Get out. So I think I actually stayed alive just to spite him because he kept telling me.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
I was just like, no, I'm not going to. And I did actually say to him once, I said, I'm not going to die just to fit your statistics. And he just,
It's what's interesting for me is what relationship you have with cancer, almost as like a bit of a character in your life. And the name of the website I think is really clever. Conversations with Cancer, works on so many levels.
Yeah, because I had to get into a conversation with the cancer.
Yeah.
In order to, because when people go to the website, they'll probably realise quickly that I don't fight the cancer. I fought the system. I fought the consultant. I don't fight the cancer because I triggered the cancer with my own thoughts, beliefs, behaviour, and inability to deal with stress. So unless I learn that lesson, which it's part of the condition that every couple of years, every so often, it'll flare, and I might have to go in and be rebooted again. But if you look at pictures of me 4 years ago when I was in trouble and I was being saved, I look ill. You look at me having a stem cell transplant, I look dead. I literally struggled so much with that. And this year, literally, I got stuck in Tenerife for Christmas and came back in May.
Awful.
I know, but without my chemo. And a short holiday means that I can sort of go without the drugs and I'm fine because it's a short holiday. I don't get stressed. I'm relaxed and the sunshine really helps.
Yeah.
But I got stuck for 6 months and I got glandular fever, lived it up a bit too much, went blind in one eye, migraines, nosebleeds, couldn't walk up a hill without heart attack symptoms, totally ignored all of it. And my doctor was screaming at me to come back to the UK, but there were no flights. So I just drank more cocktails.
Just brilliant.
And just ignored it because I'm really, really good at ignoring stuff, you know. Yeah. So I just ignored it and just ticked along on adrenaline and cocktails, and that was it, really. Had the most wonderful relationship with an Italian hairdresser who's so cool. But I was living on the edge, yeah, and ignoring all these symptoms.
But look how amazing you look now, you know.
Well, thank you, but I don't remember feeling that ill throughout the whole thing. So I've been rebooted and upgraded again just recently. I spent June in hospital. They took out 3 litres of cancer. So I'm there. They had to take my blood out and replace it with synthetic blood 3 times because there wasn't enough room to
do that.
They wanted to do a transfusion and there was no room for the blood because it was all cancer. And it's really thick like jelly. So that's why I was having heart attacks, was because it couldn't get it round, you know?
Right. Okay.
So, yeah, they had to, but there's pictures of me sort of sat there, hooked up to this machine, looked like flipping Lara Croft, you know? I'm just like, yeah, bring it on. This is great. So even though on paper, I might look as if I'm about to die, in reality, I'm nowhere near, absolutely nowhere near.
So do you have like, you know, you say, you know, you don't fight the cancer, you fight, you know, the establishment really. How do you see it? Do you see the cancer almost, you know, if it was a persona or a, you know?
Oh, it's a brilliant early warning system.
Right.
A brilliant early warning system, because if I am living my life in the wrong way that creates stress, it goes up.
Right.
If I'm living it in the right way, it goes down.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I wanted to do it all naturally and be a hero. And, you know, there's a lot of people out there that have beaten cancer all sorts of different ways. They all think their way is the way for everybody. But there's a lot of heroic stories out there of people who have beaten it and then they want to coach people. I imagined I was going to do that. It actually turns out that I still have to learn to regulate my energy, because I've got so much energy that I get overexcited about stuff as well as stressed. So unless I can learn to dial down that energy, which I was naturally born a bit hyper, I will keep going through this. But actually I'm quite comfortable with it, because if I don't bother it, it doesn't bother me. You know, if we hit it hard, it comes back hard. If we just lose interest in it, if we just keep it down and low, and I might have 10 or 20% in there all the time. I've never got into remission, but then I'm not that bothered about getting into remission. If I can live with it and it doesn't bother me, it's blood cancer. It's everywhere. I'm not having great lumps cut out of me like people with breast cancer or bowel cancer, or, you know, awful. I got a friend with throat cancer. You know, there's some awful cancers out there. But I remember saying to my consultant, because I didn't look at it on the internet or anything when I was first diagnosed, and I said, "Oh, it's not terminal, is it?" I said, "I'll die with it rather than of it." And he went, "No, it is terminal." He said, "I'll give you." He said, "On average, it's about 5 years from diagnosis and treatment. By the way, you start chemo Monday."
Shit.
And I went, "No." I said, "I'm not going to do that." I said, I did call him a few names, but I said, that's like forcing me into an arranged marriage with a very violent man.
Ooh, that's an analogy, isn't it?
I'm not having it. I said, "I'm not having it." And in fact, there was an F word in there. When he said it's terminal, my exact response was, "I'm not effing having that." Instant. No, I do not accept that. So the fact that I didn't accept it from the word go means when I go into the hospital and I look on paper as if I'm about to die, and I might feel a bit crap, but not for that bad, I have no doubts in my mind whatsoever that I'm just going to be stronger at the other side of it and I'll come out better. Because they look at my blood results. They looked at my blood results a few weeks ago, and I just come out of hospital, and they went, "There's no trace of you ever having anything wrong with you. Yes, the blood cancer is up and down with, you know, in your blood. That's fine. That's the way it is. Your organs, your bloods, you've been seriously anemic. Your kidneys are going, your liver's going. Within a week, doesn't look like it's ever happened." So my default setting is fit and healthy.
Yeah.
So that's where I always go.
Do you think we all actually maybe have that default setting available to us?
Totally. But we just don't believe it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't, it's not even that I believe it, I know it.
That's the difference, isn't it? The knowing. Knowing is a big part of it. And, you know, I've certainly experienced that in recent times with various belief systems about things that I've had. And when I've come to a place of not just intelligently knowing it and not just believing it, but actually knowing it in my core, that's when the shifts are made. But it's how you get there, isn't it? That's the question.
Yeah, and I think sometimes when you instantly respond without thinking, and you're coming from a place of knowing, this is not Kay thinking that. That's coming from the collective consciousness or the universe or God or whatever you want to call it. I'm not a religious person, but that passage that I wrote about if God, you know, said this, it didn't seem to fit so well if I said if the universe said this.
Yeah.
So, but we just call it different things, you know. I mean, and the latest science. I mean, I'm very much into Greg Braden. I'm good friends with Peter Sage. I was with him in Tenerife. People like Dr. Joe Dispenza. Yeah, you've done the EMF course.
We'll talk about
they're teaching this stuff now. They're teaching about how the universe works. The fact that it could well be a virtual reality. You know, this is the character, and that I am chosen
to experience potentially right now in this version of whatever you're in. Yeah.
So actually, the reason I call it a reboot and upgrade when I go into hospital, nearly die, don't die, blah, is because when you get to the end of a level of a game, you go and you get more weapons and more tools and more skills, and then you go out and you play
with them. And you know where the monsters are, you know where the trapdoors are.
You've got that experience, and then you take all that to the next level. So to me, each reboot and upgrade is going on to the next level. I've completed that level onto the next level.
Yeah.
Or another analogy is like a Formula One car. I'm coming into the pit stop. I'm getting my new tyres and my fuel and all that stuff, and I'm back out, you know. So I don't see it as an end. I don't sit in hospital thinking, oh, I'm going to die, you know. I've been close. I've been super close, over 90%, you know, and laying there and can't move and you know, nosebleeds and everything's falling apart. And on paper, I shouldn't have survived the night. even in my sort of like darkest moment, I was still sending a shitty email to my landlord saying, I'm not going to move back into the flat because it's damp and I keep getting sepsis and I'm not having it, so
That's just brilliant. So let's talk a little bit about EMF and the likes of, because I would think of you, because people won't have any clue what this is, chances are. So EMF is Elite Mentorship Forum. I always forget what the F is.
Yeah.
And that's run by your good friend, Mr. Peter Sage.
Yes.
Who is of the Tony Robbins School of Thought. And so are you. And you're what I would call not just an EMFer, but a pre-EMFer, which is quite hard to say, actually. So tell me about your kind of personal development journey a bit more then.
I didn't really know anything about personal development. I was quite a serene, sort of easygoing girl. And then I ended up with this guy who was really into all the personal development stuff. His name was Andy. And we had this fairly dramatic relationship. But we were in business together. We ran a marketing and PR consultancy. And not only did he teach me about business, but he also taught me about personal development. And the trouble is that I was so keen to please that if somebody said to me, I think you've got a problem, I would actually have the problem.
It's a bit like
and then
the nocebo effect.
They could sort me out, and they all, they used to practice on me and things. But I found personal development actually made me more messed up than if I hadn't have discovered it at all. However, because analysing everything became then a pattern. And always questioning everything, and am I right or am I wrong, or should I think this or should I do that? And I was all right until I started being told I wasn't right. So I think my reasons for getting into it were curiosity. I've always been curious. I've been to lots of religious sites and places. I've been to Israel and Lourdes. I go and find out for myself. I don't like to be told. I like to go and find out for myself. But my curiosity has ended up with me being brainwashed by cults and all sorts of things in the past, only for a period of time before I go, yeah, that's enough now. And I go. But that journalistic sort of attitude means that rather than just look at something and think, no, that's not for me, I tend to just throw myself in and then go, no, that's not for me, and come out again.
Yeah.
So I need to experience things, which makes it seem like I'm flitting here, there, and everywhere. But actually, I'm investigating. I'm curious, and I'm trying to decide what's for me and what isn't.
Trying out the things on the buffet.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'll go through the whole buffet. Just try everything. So that all ended rather badly. But then shortly after that, I went to a party that Pete had up in Leicester and didn't go home for 10 years. Really. I phoned home and went, I've moved.
Oh, by the way, that's where I've been the last 5 years.
Because he needed a wing woman, and I'm a particularly good wing woman, and I'd just split up with my husband, to whom I was a wing woman, who was very much like him. So it just all happened again. And I was sort of, I wasn't able to cope with the amount of chaos and it was a lot of dynamic stuff and a lot of businesses and a lot of action, but somebody else that likes the energy to move as well.
Yeah.
So it was too much of both of us.
Right.
So I took a back step and learned to not be that person.
Okay.
Because he was being that person, I didn't need to be that person. Mm-hmm. There was not enough airtime for the two of us. And so I became the best wing woman in the world. Was a bit of a rubbish PA, to be honest. But, just being around somebody that was doing as much as him and changing the world and making such a difference to people, it was like living with Tony Robbins, to be honest. Mm-hmm. And he's done some amazing things over the years, but this is when he was a lot younger. And, younger guys, they're a bit crazy. you know, they're a bit crazy with that testosterone.
Especially with the likes of our Peter. It's definitely
exactly. And adore him I did, but yeah, we've just stayed friends over the years. I mean, I went off and did other things, he went off and did other things, but that connection was always there. And when I had the cancer, and I let him know that I had the cancer and everything, you know, we weren't really in touch. He had a girlfriend at the time. And it was only when I was in hospital last year that he contacted me and said, I've moved to Tenerife. Come and get some sunshine. It'll help. You know, I know you're not well, but come over and get some sunshine. So I started to go over there without my chemo. And for a couple of weeks at a time, I had a great time. Helped him out while I was there, which was great. Because I've always had the theory that if you help the people that help the most people, you help the most people. Yeah. So I can't do much on my own, but by helping somebody like him, I could help more people in an indirect way.
Yeah. So this is a role, isn't it, that you play in life, this wing woman role?
It is, but it is not my natural role, because I am much more like him than he knows, and that I admit. But when you've got somebody who is like on a super level like that, I can't compete. So I tend to take a back step and just support. But then I'm not a domestic goddess. I do my best, but I'm not a domestic goddess. And it did start to eat away at me after a little while. And I just sort of, because I was there for too long. I was there for a good few months, and the stress started to creep back in. And I just felt, even though it was a beautiful life and walking the dogs and the pool and the luxury villa and house sitting and dog sitting and helping Pete, and it was all very exciting, but I was just a little bit not me.
And is that because you'd had to dial down in order to be around Pete's energy?
Yeah. And so anybody that's high energy, I step back and dial down. But then if it goes on for too long, then that part of me that needs to play gets suppressed a little bit.
Interesting. So it's like you're sort of self-squashing, you're compromising really key parts of who you are and how you show up. So that the world can deal with the combined energy.
Exactly.
Of the two of you.
Exactly. And that's exactly what happened in my second marriage, because he was a similar character. He was such a big character. I became the wing woman and then started to get ill. And then that's what happened during the winter. Started to get ill because I was only being half of who I was.
Isn't this fascinating?
And, it just shows, after all these years and all these things I've learned, that's still a pattern that I am repeating. And it didn't bring out the best in either of us, I don't think.
So
it was great, but,
how do you get the balance then? Because we were talking earlier about your stress levels rise, so does the cancer, but you also recognise that your giddiness levels rise, the intensity of your positive energy, when that rises, also that can affect cancer. So if you also then know that dialing back that energy can cause you issues as well, how do you get that balance? How does that happen?
This is what I'm working on. The thing is that any extremes aren't good.
Yes.
Well, good and bad is our perception. It doesn't work very well for staying healthy. So the what's it called on the desk where it goes doink, doink?
Oh,
doink.
yeah, the 80 stress toy things. Yeah. That's really weird to do that on here, by the way, because it's the opposite way.
I know, it's the opposite way. It's almost like I'm so used to the extremes that the balance in the middle, I sort of go through it rather than stay there.
Yeah.
So what I'm thinking is, and what I'm learning, the big lesson from this is the cancer's going nowhere unless I learn to balance more consistently.
So it's constantly presenting you with this opportunity to learn.
Opportunity to learn. It's an early warning system. It never kills me, and it's not going to. And it's
not done with you yet, is it?
It's a kick up the arse. Every couple of years, I get a kick up the arse, and I sort of get all cocky, thinking, oh, it's low, it's not bothering me, I don't need to take the chemo, da 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 da. But then, if I'm not that strict with my diet and my thoughts and my beliefs, and I slip, it's not a consistent environment for the cancer to just not be there anymore.
Yeah.
So it's and this is why I've got into a lot of a health program with Kat Wilton of Synergy, because the DNA test that I am waiting for to come back, it shows you what you should be eating, drinking, and having as supplements and all that sort of thing based on your DNA. It's not guesswork. It's not, all these diet plans and nutrition plans. It's all guesswork based on general information. Whereas if you have a DNA test that shows you what, this is what Kay has, this is what Kay needs, and what Kay doesn't need, it's nothing to do with anybody else. I can't argue with that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's pretty cool, isn't it?
And it also helps you avoid things later on in life. Like, I was resistant to having a DNA test because I didn't want to know if I was going to get Alzheimer's, which my mum is really bad with at the moment. Her mother was bad. I didn't want to know if that was coming, because it's auto-suggestion again.
Yeah.
So what Kat says, which is really good, which is the genes load the gun and the lifestyle pulls the trigger. So that's really good, because that, if I remember that, that's like, okay, it might be in the genes, but what I actually do, think and believe and eat is going to be the decider.
Well, we also know now as well, don't we? We're starting to understand scientifically that we can change the structure of our cells according to our environment, or as a result of our environment, and what we, psychologically, mentally, spiritually, do can affect.
Yeah. Oh, totally, because it's all frequencies and energy, isn't it?
Yeah.
So this is what Pete teaches as well. It's if everything is energy and frequency, then of course every time I broadcast, I'm reaffirming what I don't want a lot of the time, because I'm telling that story. So by telling our story, we're embedding that energy and that frequency and that belief that actually just keeps the thing happening. So if we constantly want something or we don't want something, that's going to perpetuate itself. So of course the up-to-date way of looking at things at the moment, and I say at the moment because it'll always change, is that you are grateful for what you want as if it's already happened.
Yeah.
And that's a hard thing to do.
Wish fulfilled and live as if. Yeah.
So you just say, I am grateful that this is coming to me, rather than I want or I need or something. Yeah. So I've a lot of that.
One of the the things that we've talked about a lot on our EMF community calls is this concept of when you get to a certain point, you don't need to keep manifesting, doing the envisaging or envisioning or whatever word we use these days.
It's getting into the habit of it, isn't it? And it's getting into the habit of doing things like the oath of manifestation and the various meditations and things. And for people who don't know what EMF is, it's an online course which Pete runs, which is basically looks at every aspect of your life, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's like mega dialed up self-mastery, basically, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. So highly recommend that. But yeah, so it's been, I think the difference with me and a lot of people is that I tend to broadcast warts and all, and I don't mind cocking up, making mistakes and making an idiot of myself. But I can over communicate as a way of not dealing with things, and I have to recognize when I am sitting on my own. It was very handy in the hospital to be able to just put things on Facebook rather than try and reply to texts and things. But I think that it's like getting caught up in the obsession with communicating, taking photographs of everything. But then I've always liked photography. I've always taken lots of photographs. that sort of a person. I just, when my mum told me that Father Christmas didn't exist, went and told the whole street, got grounded straight away, just because it's news.
And do you think you need to change that if that's who you are?
It's not very helpful sometimes, but
I mean, obviously we have to consider impact and on others, but if this is part of who you are, why fight it?
Yeah, there's some people who embrace it and love it, and
there's others who never will.
About it.
Isn't that okay?
Yeah. But when you are going through this lack of identity and trying to sort of please too many people, I think a lot of people feel very lonely even when they're surrounded by a lot of other people, is because, and Pete says this about that feeling of separation from others. Once you understand how the universe works, you don't get that feeling of separation so much. And you can connect with people more. And I think if because I had a lot of operations, I had been, I don't want to say, I'm going to say it, raped and abused as a teenager. I didn't know how to say it without using the word.
Say the words.
Because I was very lost, I was vulnerable to that, to being taken advantage of. But because I'd had such a traumatic sort of teenage life onwards, I was already set up to deal with trauma. And my way of dealing with trauma was to just rock up as if nothing had happened. I rock up, nothing's happened, it's all fine, carry on. Keep moving, keep talking, keep moving, keep talking, and keep broadcasting, and just look forward instead of at what I didn't want to deal with. So even when therapists and people like that said, oh, you need to deal with it. No, I don't. I've moved on from that, But what I didn't recognize was that there were beliefs and patterns of behavior, like people pleasing, or not being able to say no, or not being able to speak up if things got a bit, like if someone violated my space, I wouldn't necessarily know what to do. And even as an adult in my 40s, I still get into trouble with people violating my space and not knowing how to move them away. And I think a lot of people are stuck at teenage.
I think that's and not to be stereotypical about it, but I think that is very much a female thing. I mean, I know it's not just a female thing, but I know it's not by any stretch, but I've certainly experienced that those friends who get too handsy, and because they're such a good pal,
don't want to lose the friendship.
Kind of like I'm really that sort of I'm really sorry you're causing me a problem, apologizing, and that being too uncomfortable, so just not saying it, and then a situation happening, and you think then beating yourself up because you never asserted yourself, and fear of being gaslighted, and that is
and that's happened a fair bit. But also my immature reactions to people developed a perception from them that I was a lot more confident than I really was. So people would say, oh, if somebody put their hand on Kay's leg, she'd tell them to F off. No. I'd absolutely freeze and not know what to do. So I was confident in a lot of areas, but even in the business world, things like that happened. And I was like, hang on, I'm supposed to be getting money out of you. You just touched my leg. Ah, crap. So it's like the casting couch. A lot of the Me Too casting couch stuff is because of that. So I think I've willingly experienced an awful lot of ups and downs because I was always curious, and I was always like, hang on, that happened. Why did that happen? What can I do about that? But I'd find that I'd keep repeating it and repeating it and repeat, because a lesson's only good if you learn it.
Because otherwise you're getting given that lesson again and again and again.
And it's boundaries. And because I was brought up with very few boundaries, I didn't know how to set them. And my sister is naturally somebody who sets big boundaries. She's naturally like, don't touch me, don't come near me, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, love me. I'll do anything you want.
Yeah.
So, and I think my speaking up came out inappropriately or sometimes too aggressively because I didn't quite know how to do it.
Yeah, to articulate that in a,
So it's the passive aggressive thing. So all these observations over the years have made me think, I've just been reacting. I've just been reacting to everything. You know, it sounds more complicated, but that's just what it is. I was reacting to everything. I wasn't seeing it until afterwards. And the cancer was just a result of a very long and exciting and dramatic life, lots of ups and downs, where I broke the DNA in the end. The DNA just malfunctioned. And my lack of commitment and belief in other people meant that even when people were trying to help me or give me ways that I could help myself, wasn't completely on board. You know, and these courses, and Pete very kindly put me on EMF. It took me a few months to even engage with that, and I was in the same house as him. You know, and I was just like, I wasn't engaging with it. But then
I bet he loved that, didn't he?
Well, do you know what? He's an incredible guy. And I absolutely adore him. But I'm not a groupie.
Yeah.
I'm just not a groupie. And I think that's probably why we're friends, because it's quite nice when somebody
knows it's real, doesn't he?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think that my sense of humor about everything as well is that I'm constantly taking the mick and laughing about stuff and, you know, rebadging things. I completely reframe everything to suit myself. You know, it's like I keep calling the hospital a hotel because I really get waited on and I enjoy it.
But that's, you know, that's a good way to rebel, actually, isn't it? You know, the mechanisms, establishments, ideas, concepts that society's created for us, if we can look at them in a different way, then they have a completely different meaning attached to them. And that means that our experience is different. And that's pretty bloody powerful stuff, actually, you know?
Yeah. Some people thought I was deluded and, you know, and I'm just like, no, I'm just changing reality to suit myself.
I have a much smaller version of that that's just suddenly sprung to mind. When I left my proper adult job, you know, the kind of job that grown-ups have in 2016 to go free range, I had to work 3 months notice, and I'd been made redundant. I'd been managed out, basically, because I was an arsehole to the, well, I actually wasn't. I was just a problem child to the boss. I actually think I was pretty cool. It was him that was the arsehole. Anyway, the point is that I then worked my 3 months notice, and I could not have been happier. I was skipping around like a happy little bunny, really happy. And everybody that I encountered was like, "Are you okay? You're being made redundant. Are you all right?" I'm like, "Yes, I'm really happy. I'm getting out of this place. How brilliant." And the reactions I got were just odd. People didn't know what to do with it.
Yeah, exactly.
Just, you know, okay, you want to go out on your own, but you're being made redundant. That, you know, that's the thing you're meant to feel bad about. Why would I?
And that's the problem, isn't it? Is that the majority have a belief about how life works.
Yeah.
And they impose that on other people. Anybody who's different, anybody who's different is going to change some people's views as they go along, just because that's natural. But people don't change history unless they're different. And I said to my mum when I was little, I said, I wasn't born to be mediocre, you know. But it can be
definitely went with that one for sure.
Yeah, it can be quite exhausting.
Yeah.
When I just naturally have an awful lot of energy, and I'm no longer working full time, or I don't have that pressure on me to get up and go to work anymore.
Yeah.
Which is great, because all I ever wanted when I was working was just be able to do what I wanted, get, you know, bills paid, have a nice car, park where I want, and you know, you know, and then because actually cancer gave me the life that I always wanted,
right?
But with a ceiling.
Yeah.
So I'm nicely packaged Let's put it that way. And there's that part of me that's very driven and wants to move forward, that an easy life isn't, I don't like it to be too easy. No, because there's no growth in easy, is there?
No, there's not. It's not a comfort-centric experience, this life, is it?
Yeah. No.
Not meant to be.
However, there are some people that find a very low stress way of going through life and have fun and don't react to things without, they don't have knee-jerk reactions. And I suppose it's a maturation process, in that if a lot of us are stuck in teenage emotional mode because that's where some shit happened and that's where we got stuck, then just growing up a bit is all we need to do. We don't have to change who we are. We don't have to become who, sort of like we don't have to start wearing grey all the time. You know what I mean? But
there's a difference between childish and childlike, isn't there? A big difference.
Yeah. And having that childlike wonder of the world. I mean, I can get excited about putting the washing out, quite frankly. It's this slightest thing. But it means that I'm like, and I get a lot of opportunities come my way, and I never really learned. I am learning now, but I didn't really learn what was an opportunity and what was a distraction.
Right. Big difference.
So that's a wisdom thing. Mm-hmm. But if you're too busy firing off all over the place and reacting and being offended and being sensitive and, falling out with people, then you haven't got that wisdom going on. And you might have moments of it, but actually, if you're stuck in teenage emotional mode, therapy may not be the thing. Enlightening yourself as to how the world works and how you can perceive things differently. To me, I've never really been into therapy because I just go in and entertain them with stories and then leave. I'm just like, hi, another person to talk to.
Yeah, I kind of get where you're coming from with that. I want somebody to challenge my thinking. I want somebody to draw stuff out of me. I had a conversation with a mentor of mine just before we came on this, and he has this ability. He thinks very differently to me, but he understands me too, and he has this ability to draw out things from my psyche that are incredibly useful. And he doesn't give me strategies and he doesn't give me tools or techniques, but he also just doesn't kind of blanket listen and let me just pour information at him. He really challenges me, and I think that's a really useful thing to have to be able to do, to learn about the world, rather than, like you say, just talking to somebody who's going to write notes and go, great, next week then, see ya.
Yeah, and absolutely right. And unfortunately, a lot of people, if they just keep sitting there telling their story all the time, it embeds it even more. Of
course it does.
And I've been guilty of that myself. When I'm feeling low or ill, I don't really get depressed because I can't be bothered. I get bored too quickly. I'm like, I'm depressed, bored.
Yeah, that's boring. Let's do something different.
Sorry, can't do that one. But what I find is that people who invest in so much therapy that just goes on and on and on and on and on, they're repeating that same old shit all the time, and it's not helping them at all. There's probably some therapists that are, I mean, my God, there's a lot of therapists that are very good. But I'm talking about the old-fashioned therapy.
Yeah.
So for instance,
the Macmillan nurses.
Yeah. So what the Macmillan nurses do, and they do a lot of good for a lot of people, but it didn't work for me. What they were offering was, because if you're going to be emotional, they're there for you. If you've got family problems, as in you've got children and wife or husband, and you needed some help to sort your life out, they're great. But when I was in hospital for any length of time, and I've been in for weeks at a time, they'd come in with this tablet and it would have loads of questions on it about what's upsetting you at the time. So it'd be like an assessment of your mental state. And they'd come in and say, can you do this assessment? And I'd be like, oh, Really? You're going to take me out of my positive mindset and ask me about my problems? Great. So I'd fill it in. And by the time they came to pick it up and they sort of went, yeah, thanks for that, it would, I'd be feeling crap. I'd be like, well, I was feeling fine until you came in.
Bunks.
In the end, I refused to do it. In the end, I said no, because what you're doing is you are asking me what's bothering me, and you're not
making me think about it.
Anything. And then you're going.
Yeah.
You're leaving me thinking I'm feeling upset now.
What did they do with that then?
I don't know.
That information, like they just take it
Probably
away
went into a database.
Some data.
And they have been very helpful in we came to the agreement that if I wanted something, I'd ask.
Yeah.
And don't bother coming around to see if I need a good cry. It's not going to happen.
If I need a good cry, I'll just bloody do it and you'll deal with it.
But that's the funny thing, is that I've cried about other things, but never the cancer.
Yeah.
Never. Because being ill, having physical problems, to me, a terminal disease is not as much of a problem as somebody shouting at me.
Right.
Or a relationship that doesn't quite work, or, I find people a lot of the time, and I'm much better now. I am much better now that I've done EMF and I've done a lot of personal development, and I catch myself now thinking, that was rude. And then I think, no, they don't know that's rude. That's just how they come across, blah, blah, blah. That's your perception. So I have done a lot of work in that area. But I think that we spend so many years of our lives just reacting and being offended and arguing and falling out
or avoiding conflicts and then holding it in.
Exactly. And that sort of swallowing things down creates disease.
Yeah, it does. It really does. You hold that toxicity.
Exactly.
Okay, we have managed to do a good hour and 12 minutes already, and I sense we could continue this on for many hours if the world would allow us. I'm going to ask you, and I sense there'll be an interesting response to this. What's next for you? What's the focus for you? And I imagine you may resist that question in some form or other in its normal traditional responses that I would get from that.
What's next? Connecting with my horse more.
Nice.
I recognize that I've gone for volume rather than deep connections with people.
Ooh.
And my son is one of them. Pleasing the world instead of putting him first a lot of the time. And I've been doing the same with my horse, and because I'm so used to, in the bad weather, not being around, because I struggle to get through the bad weather. That was a bit of a affirmation to myself that I didn't want to make. In the past, I've struggled to get through the winter.
Very nice.
So I jet off to warmer climes, and he gets, he's very well looked after, but he's not had a consistent time with me. And he wants to be treated and connected with, and horses are so emotional and spiritual.
Yeah.
He holds me to a standard that I don't always meet. And he lets me know. And as I said to you just before the call, there was a friend of mine at the yard who had a bit of a pep talk with me this morning as my horse and I were getting more agitated with each other. And she just said, you don't know how to dial down your energy, do you? Please learn to dial it down. And I don't. I just go, and that frantic energy, I just think I'm being excited or positive or happy or whatever. But that high energy, he can't cope with it. And when I just lie in the grass and he stands over me and we just chill together, that's amazing. But when I've got my doing hat on, I put too much energy into it, and then it becomes the energy that he can't deal with. And so I recognize how I've not prioritized him as much as I should have done. and that connection keeps coming and going. So while the good weather's here, yeah, there's lots of projects I'm working on. Yeah, there's the website. Yeah, there's all sorts of other things that I'm doing. There's people I'm seeing. But if he isn't priority, if I'm priority one with my health, if he's not priority two, then I'm not learning what I need to learn.
That's amazing. It makes me think about my relationship with my dog, because he's so sensitive to my energy and my mood. So sensitive.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a nightmare. If I'm ill, off kilter, he's so anxious. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Slightest thing.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful thing. It's a lovely order of priorities. First.
And the rest of it will come. Whatever, what will be, will be. But I'm hoping that I don't have to have another major reboot and upgrade, because some of it isn't pleasant.
Good.
You know, but I think that I'm strong enough now that I can find balance, dial down the energy, connect better, and reduce the amount of noise.
Yes, that's a big thing, reducing the noise. We do a program in the membership about dialing down the drama noise, funnily enough.
Oh, right.
It's an 8 module thing, and it's there's a little there's
flavors
of EMS in there. EMF even.
I ought to offer that on the web, on my website as well, because I've soft launched the website, conversationswithcancer.co.uk, but I'm still tweaking and tinkering with some of the back end pages, adding health and nutrition and all that sort of stuff. As I learn stuff, it's going on there. But yeah, if there's anything that you think will help people who've been diagnosed or are dealing with cancer, because actually the natural ways and sometimes the medical ways, as long as they complement each other, you just have to be in charge of your own destiny. Because if somebody gets cancer and then they just follow what the doctor says, yeah, sure, they might get better, but an awful lot don't. If you actually take responsibility for your own healing, and find out what works for you, that's my goal, is to really just open some doors and get people asking the right questions, so that they can heal themselves.
That's a powerful thing, and the world needs a lot of that. Really beautiful.
Definitely.
Thank you so much, Kay.
Pleasure, my darling.
People can find you on. People can find you on conversationswithcancer.co.uk. Anywhere else that is good for them to hang out with you?
They can connect with me on Facebook.
Cool.
I've got a couple of those, because I did have a work one and a personal one, but they all merged into a whatever. So yeah, either of the Facebooks. And because I'm going to be really focusing on the health, nutrition, and this DNA test is going to come back at some point, and then I'll share that. But yeah, your 8-week course, I think, is something that I could offer maybe through my website as well. So give me details of that and I'll come and do it as well.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. You and I can stay on after I've hit end broadcast. But Rebels and Rule Breakers, if you're watching this on replay, please tell us and contribute. Tell us what you think. Tell us your stories. Ask your questions.
Yeah, case studies would be very useful.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. If you want to connect with Kay and have conversations about anything that we've talked about today, then absolutely, let's do that. Let's get that happening. Thank you, guys, and thank you, Kay.
Thank you.